This is Acustica Audio's First Softsynth. This is Thing 8. Thing 8 is based off of the Jupiter 8 analog synthesizer from yesteryear. Let's take a look at the controls. At the top, we have the detuning section. We have super stereo. We have a sub-oscillator that can be switched between square and sine. The synthesizer is 8 voices only, but you can reduce it down to 2. We have a sync option here, and we have the ability to resize the plugin. The age modifies the signal itself, but it also gives a more vintage look to the plugin. The next section is the effects section. The original synth that is emulated here did not have an effects section, and these are effects based on Acustica Audio's dynamic convolution technology. Saturation with the number of saturation selections, tone, which is EQ, chorus with a handful of chorus types based off of their chorus plugin, delay with quite a number of delays available in here from actual hardware delay units, and reverb with quite a number of reverbs in here based off of their convolution technology. You can change the quality from normal, mega to echo, depending on your CPU power. You can trim the effects, and of course, a switch to turn off and on the effects. Over to the right, we have a readout. These 3 dots represent the 3 selections that you have for the tone control. But if you click this button, you now have the ability to see the signal itself. Above this, we have the global MIDI learning and local MIDI learning. Global MIDI learning will allow you to assign one of your keyboard controller's controls, knobs, buttons, sliders, to a global function within the plugin that operates across all instances independently. Local MIDI learning means that any control that you assign is specific for that synthesizer instance. At the very top, we do have presets and preset management. Quite a number of presets are available, and you can save your own. Under that top section, we get down to the meat of the synthesizer. This section here is the LFO. You can change the rate and the delay time of the LFO. You can also change the waveform of the LFO as well. And you have the ability to be a free running LFO, or you can sync it to your DAW. The next section is the VCO modulator. This is modulation for our VCOs. So we can do LFO modulation to our VCOs, or we can do envelope modulation to our VCOs. And you have the ability to have this effect only one or both. Post width modulation comes available here as well, and that can be changed between the LFO and the envelope, or it can be done manually. These are the 2 VCOs that make up the sound of the synthesizer, VCO 1 and VCO 2. Now, as I alluded to earlier, you do have a sub-oscillator here that is not necessarily changeable outside of its volume and the 2 types that you get. But for VCO 1, we have cross modulation that can happen between the 2 oscillators. We have the pitch range, with this being the lowest, this being the highest. You have a total of 4 different waveforms that you can choose for VCO 1. And then for VCO 2, you can sync it to VCO 1 or not. We have the same amount of ranges for VCO 2. However, this one has interpolated steps, so you can go in between the different pitches, unlike VCO 1, which only allows you to select the 4 different ranges. With VCO 2, you have the normal pitch range, or you can switch it to a low frequency set. So this lowers these numbers even more. giving you a greater degree of customizability in this oscillator. You can fine tune the pitch, and then the waveforms that are available here are the same with the exception of the noise. So you get the first three waveforms that you can get in VCO1, but this has noise as the fourth waveform oscillator versus a square wave with VCO1. You can blend between VCO1 and VCO2 here. And then the next section is the filter types. Now we have a handful of filter types here, and this is for the low pass filter. All right, so we have a total of 5 to choose from, but we have a high pass filter here and its cutoff. We have a low pass filter with its accompanying resonance filter. We do have the choice between -12 and -24 dB for the slope. You also have the ability to enhance the resonance even further with this knob. We have the ability to assign the envelope modulation to the filter as well. Here you can either use envelope 1 or envelope 2. And you can also modify this by velocity sensitivity through this knob. LFO modulation is available as well, so this ties this to how much you're getting from this section here. We also have key follow, the VCA section, so this allows you to change how much of envelope 2 has an effect on the amplitude. And then you have 4 LFO modulations that you can choose between with the LFO modulation here, and that can be changed with velocity sensitivity as well. Moving below here, we have the 2 envelopes that come with the software synthesizer. So they're both practically the same, all right, with the exception of the polarity. So this flips all of the sliders to their opposite. So this essentially would be up here, right? So that gives you a certain flexibility with one of the envelopes. The key follow activation is available for each one of these envelope generators. We have the arpeggio section here, and we'll come back to that in just a second. I want to touch on the portamento section. This is just from the future. Seems I had my wires crossed. This section here is the performance section. So this controls how much the pitch bend affects the VCOs or the VCF, and this allows you to do some additional modulation on the oscillators and the filters. Nothing to do with the portamento. Let's get back to it. Now, the arpeggio section here works in tandem with here. So you have 4 different arpeggio modes that you can select, and you activate the arpeggio here. You also have the directions that this goes. So this here is how far the range of the notes that it affects. This section here changes the pattern of the arpeggio. So you have it set to just up, it will go just up, just down, it will go just down, up and down, you get it. And then you have random. You can modify the rate here. If it's set to internal, then it will do it based off of this slider. If you have it set to external, then it will sync with your DAW, and you can change the type of arpeggio pattern with these knobs here. The assign mode here is where you would set this to solo, but you can also put the plugin in unison, right? And then you have 2 separate poly options here. And then this hold button, this latches whatever notes that you're playing. There is no off, right? It's good for things like drones. Finally, we have the volume, balance, and master tune for the plugin right here. And not to be remiss, we do have the modulation wheel available on this version of the plugin, and the bend as well. Now, if you do not need all of the things that Thing 8 provides, and you want a much more simpler version of the soft synth, this is what Thing 5 is for. Thing 5 can be likened unto the Jupiter 6. So we're still using 2 VCOs. We still have the sub option here, right? We have the basic modulation options here, a filter section, high pass, cutoff, resonance. We don't have the extra resonant enhancer here, but we have the basic stuff. We do have all of the same filters available in here. For the envelopes, now we have a number of envelopes that is available here that I don't believe we have in the original one. Now you notice there's only one envelope on this one. There is not 2. So that's one of the simplifications that come with this version of the plugin. We do have the LFO, all right, and this LFO switch is done here rather than an actual switch within it. We have the age, the output, we have the portamento, which is called glissando here, but that's basically the portamento time. You can change the number of voices to monophonic here instead of it being on a switch. The tuning here, we do have the super stereo, and this is the unison selection here. So how much of the unison that you want to adjust. And of course, the effects are in here. They are a little bit more slimmed down, right? But you have all 5 effects available to you to use on this version. We do not have the modulation wheel here, but we do have the bin, and we do have the ability to assign the controls to your personal controller. That, folks, is the controls. Let's see what this thing sounds like. If you're interested in getting a copy of the thing, click the link in the description. Outside of that,